Good morning from Twin Oaks Farm Poultry on YouTube. Thanks for joining us at Twin Oaks Farm in rural Southeast Ohio, USA. It's day 22 of raising this flock of 301 Cornish rock cross meat chickens. These chickens are being raised specifically for meat production. It takes 6 weeks to go from hatch to harvest, so they're ready to process at 42 days of age. At that point, we expect them to be between 6 and 8 pounds. We don't have a weight on them today because in our management practices, we actually don't weigh them. We try to minimize actually handling the birds, and I'm trying to get you a kind of a full view of the grower pen that they're in. So it is 301 birds. Actually, this is the first morning check on day 22, and we're going to actually step into the grower pen and walk amongst the meat birds to double check the wellness and double check the conditions of the birds and the conditions in the pen. One of the things we do look for is that all the birds have survived the night, so we will be looking for that, and with any luck, all of our birds have survived the night and we don't have any issues. So before we go into the pen, I did want to point out we have not been using any supplemental heat because we had a significant heat wave the end of August and the beginning of September in Southeast Ohio, USA during 2023. So this flock was a few weeks old during that heat wave, and we didn't need any supplemental heat at that time. So now they're about 3 weeks old. So we want things to be I was trying to zoom in on those two. They had postured at each other and then they just slack off. But there's all this activity, just like that. There's all this activity in the building because I opened the door, additional light streamed in, I'm talking, so they're hearing their handler's voice, and that gets them, that's a trigger to sort of get them up and going, and that all figures into a natural circadian rhythm that they have where they sort of make a cycle of going to feeders and waters about every 4 hours. So we did turn on the supplemental heat last night because it's been getting definitely in the low 60s, and we had an overnight in the high 50s. So that would be cool for these birds. They would probably be okay, but they really want to be like, mid to high 70s still. And we're working our way down to where they prefer to be in the low 70s and then like 70 degrees. So I know that looks awful, that behavior, that like chicken fight behavior, but literally that's generally all it amounts to. They posture at each other, run at each other, flap their wings, stare at each other, and move on. Now, as the birds get older, that can become more serious. And as the birds get older and the males of the flock engage in that behavior, when we get out to like them being 6 weeks old, they can really engage in a fight. And we've had, in different flocks, we've actually had a few males that we've, just a couple, that we've had to separate, like out of a flock, because we did have a couple of males that would pick on other males in the flock to the point of drawing blood. Like they might grab them by the comb with their beak and hang on and refuse to let go, and that would eventually draw blood. So, and we've had a couple of males, those two that we kind of separated in different flocks, would be aggressive to me as well when I would come into the finish pen with them. So that's also one of the reasons that we only keep meat chickens up to 6 weeks, because that behavior, especially in the males, does intensify as you approach like 7, 8 weeks. If you try to raise meat chickens out longer than 6 weeks, they can be pretty successfully raised from 7 to 10 weeks and maybe even up to 12 weeks, but that would pretty much about max it out. So we are actually in what we call the grower pen now, because we call it the grower pen because that's the phase production that this flock is basically in. And I'm basically just walking the perimeter of their grower pen now. So you're just getting a view of them for the first check of the day on day 22. You're just getting a view of everybody. And right here, what you see where they're like laying, well, now they're starting to get up, but where they're laying against this exterior wall, that's basically, when I walked in, that's basically how they looked throughout the pen. There was a lot of birds along the perimeter, just laying there, spread out like that. There were also birds toward the central area of the perimeter. Because of having the supplemental heat on, that attracted a lot of birds to where those heat lamps are focusing the heated light, and so that gave us a good stocking density and encouraged the birds to really spread out across the pen. So then with me talking and coming into the pen, that triggered activity, and so that's going to send them to feeders, like we see there. It's going to send them to waters. And so as I'm walking through here, I'm also just evaluating that the birds are all getting up, moving away from some light stimulus, which they are. And except this one, I'm going to stay in the corner. Now, go. And as they move away, now it's coming back toward me. So that one may have already eaten. Maybe it's ready to rest again. But as they move away, we're also watching this one. Is it walking well? Yes, it's walking well. Obviously, the ones that are running, we know that their legs are doing well. So now this is, remember, please, I told you that this is the first check of the day. And we said last night, we said here at home last night, y'all wouldn't have had this information. When we closed up the barn on day 21, because of these heat lamps being here, my husband and I acknowledged any of the feeders and waters central to those lights are going to be emptied first. And so keep in mind that this water tray is empty because this is the first check of the day. We'll be filling it up. But, you know, I've said before with these waters, there's still water in the reservoir, but it's down below the piece that gravity feeds it to the tray. So this water tray is empty. We'll be filling that. But look, it's central to these lights to where the supplemental heat was, and that's why. And I'm going to go ahead and go through the middle of the pen here. I can guarantee you about the same on this one. This water is central to these lights. So, you know, there will still be water in there, but there's not water in the tray. Because again, they've hung out near the supplemental heat. It felt good to them, a lot of them. So all the birds that concentrated here overnight have worked on those waters. They've also just about emptied this feeder. That's all that's left. There's not feed really in the reservoir. It's down in the tray. Same here, okay? Now, like here, this water, it's still close to a light, but just one light, and there's still water in that tray, okay? So, they didn't need this feed down as much, or that one, or those, but they're still low. So we'll be actually adding in, so we'll finish our walk around here. So we'll actually be adding in 100 pounds of feed, and I will be filling all the waters. So it looks like definitely 5 gallons, 10 gallons, and the other two are average about half used each. So we'll be putting 15 gallons of water in this morning. So they consumed 15 gallons of water overnight, 301 chickens. And they ate most of the feed. The last time feed was put in was 7 a.m. on day 21. So in 24 hours or so, they've consumed most of the feed. So we will put in 100 pounds of feed, and we will put in 15 gallons of water. The feed we probably won't have to replenish until day 23, but the water will probably have to be filled again. They'll probably consume 20 gallons of water like in the 12 hours of day 22 here. And so the best news on day 22, we walked through the pen, you just walked through the pen with me. The best news on day 22 is that all of the birds made it through the night. We didn't have any issues through the night, and all the birds are alive and well and thriving at the top of day 22, and that's the best news, because it is that's the longest break between checks from, you know, nighttime the day before to the morning of the next day. And that's particularly a concern in that time span. If a bird would get flipped over on its back and nobody's out here to help it, then that bird would end up suffocating. So that's a real worry overnight. And that's why, here's kind of the emotional investment for me as a poultry farmer. That's why, like, when I come to the barn doors in the morning, before I can even see the birds, when I'm at the door, I'm tuning my ear in to listen for any chirpiness and chattering, because as soon as I even hear them without seeing them, I'm 98% relieved that they're all doing okay. And then as I open the door and can actually peek in and see the birds and see some activity just in the pen, then I'm 99% relieved that everybody is doing okay. And then when I actually get in here and do what you just were able to be part of the process with me, to get inside of the grower pen and walk through the grower pen and look at the birds individually and see that all of them made it, that's when I'm finally 100% relieved that we had a successful day the day before. So the previous day isn't considered a success until the next morning, when we can get in there and see that the birds actually made it through the night. So thank you so much, y'all, for joining us. We are going to keep you posted. There wasn't a lot of information in this one, but this was part of the behind the scenes of how chicken is produced, and y'all coming in the barn with me, and that's really that first hands-on in the grower pen check of the day to make sure that our birds are doing all right. So please subscribe to Twin Oaks Farm Poultry on YouTube. We appreciate y'all joining us, and we hope you'll join us again back in the barn.